Welcome. We're so glad you could join us. Today, we're doing an intensive analysis of a figure who really stands at a unique crossroads of modern spirituality, celebrity culture, and global business. We're talking about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation, or TM.
Yeah.
Our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to be working through the source materials he provided, really exploring the life, the teachings, and this unbelievably complex organizational empire he built.
This is an incredible story.
It is. He managed to take an ancient Eastern tradition and somehow transform it into a worldwide phenomenon. We're going to trace his entire arc from a young Indian physics graduate all the way to becoming the spiritual advisor for rock legends.
And ultimately, the creator of a global, even multi-billion-dollar infrastructure that was, at its core, dedicated to achieving world peace.
It's an astonishing scale.
When we talk about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, or MMY, as he's often known, we really have to appreciate that scale. He was born Mahesh Prasad Varma, probably sometime in the 1910s. And the structure he built is fascinating. On one hand, observers call it a new religious movement.
But his organization would strongly disagree with that.
Vehemently.
Yeah.
They staunchly insist it's non-religious, that it's purely scientific.
Yeah.
So we're going to meticulously trace how his meditation technique evolved, how he packaged it for the masses, and then, the explosive organizational growth that followed.
And we also have to get into the significant controversies, both financial and ethical, that really shadowed his decades of global influence.
Absolutely.
And if you've seen any of the old archival footage from his first appearances in the West, one thing just jumps out at you.
I know what you're going to say.
He was sometimes called the giggling guru.
Yes.
And it was because of this frequent, almost infectious laughter that would just punctuate his television interviews. It was such a unique, disarming characteristic.
It completely set him apart from the very staid, serious image of traditional Eastern ascetics who were arriving in the West at the time. That perceived simplicity, that joy, was really central to his early marketing success.
It presented an image of a philosophy that wasn't hard or grim.
Exactly. It was immediate, it was accessible, but, and this is crucial, beneath that accessible demeanor, the sources reveal a highly strategic, incredibly organized, and frankly brilliant individual.
Right.
So our exploration today will detail how he achieved this mass dissemination, the specifics of the organizational behemoth he constructed. We're talking universities, political parties, and yes, we have to apply the necessary scrutiny to the source and use of his immense wealth and the serious allegations about his personal conduct.
And we have to be sure to cover all those facets impartially.
We must.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning and unpack his foundation. The sources indicate that even the basic details of his early life are they're a bit fluid.
They are, and that ambiguity is often intentional and traditional in these spiritual lineages.
He's shedding his worldly identity.
Precisely. We have multiple accounts of his birth year. Some say 1911, others 1917, or even 1918. His name, too. He was widely known as Mahesh Prasad Varma, but some records list him as MC Srivastava.
But there is one concrete detail we have: his background.
Yes, his caste. He belonged to the Kayastha caste. And this detail, it might seem minor to a Western audience, but it is probably the single most important piece of biographical information for understanding his later global mission.
Before we jump into his spiritual path, let's just touch on his academic achievement, because it feels so contradictory to the image of a spiritual master.
It's the first great contradiction we find, isn't it? He didn't come from a purely religious background. He was trained in the empirical tradition. He earned a degree in physics from Allahabad University in 1942.
And that scientific grounding seems to have profoundly influenced how he would later package these ancient Vedic concepts for a Western audience that was, scientifically minded.
Without a doubt. It was his unique selling proposition.
So he graduates with a physics degree, but his focus had already started shifting a bit earlier.
That's right. His spiritual apprenticeship began around 1941, while he was still studying. He became the administrative secretary and a disciple of one of the most revered figures in modern Hinduism, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati,
Who was known as Gurudev.
known as Gurudev. And Gurudev was the Shankaracharya of Jyotirmath, which is a very, very prestigious monastic seat.
So it sounds like he wasn't just another student. He was plugged right into the administrative core of a major spiritual institution from the start.
Immediately, he took the name Bal Brahmachari Mahesh, which designated him as a lifelong celibate ascetic and a student. And the sources really paint him as a truly favored people.
He wasn't just doing chores.
No. I mean, he did perform the common chores, the typical duties of an ascetic, but he moved beyond that role very quickly. He became Gurudev's personal secretary, handling all his correspondence, which required a lot of organizational skill. And eventually, he was the one entrusted to deliver public speeches on very complex Vedic themes.
So he was being groomed.
In a way, his own accounts suggest this period, starting in 1940, was when his true life really began, learning the deepest secrets of meditation directly from his master.
And now we get to the critical inflection point. Gurudev's death in 1953. This changes everything for him because even though he was the favored pupil, he couldn't take on the traditional role of succession.
This is where that detail about his caste comes into sharp focus.
Right.
This is the essential hinge of the entire global movement that follows. The position of Shankaracharya of Jyotirmath traditionally has to be filled by a Dandi sannyasi, a high-ranking monastic ascetic who must, by custom, be born into the Brahmin caste.
Ben Mahesh was Kayasta.
He was Kayasta, traditionally the caste of scribes and administrators. So he was ineligible. He was structurally locked out of the highest traditional spiritual authority.
So, denied that administrative role within the established hierarchy, his master gave him a different, and you could say a world-changing mandate instead.
Exactly. Instead of handing over the monastic seat, Gurudev charged Mahesh with a very specific and I would say revolutionary responsibility. Travel the world and teach the core essence of meditation to the masses.
Which was a radical idea at the time.
A huge departure. Deep meditation was typically reserved for isolated advanced ascetics. So MMY's global mission was born not really of choice, but of instruction and also of his exclusion from the traditional power structure.
And after Gurudev's death, he didn't start right away.
No, he spent 2 years in seclusion in the Himalayas, apparently reflecting on this mandate before he began the global propagation.
And in 1955, he emerged.
He did. He began publicly teaching what he first called Transcendental Deep Meditation. He focused on a simple, standardized technique with a mantra designed to be immediately accessible to anyone.
And that's when he gets the title Maharishi.
Right, which means great seer. It was given to him by his growing number of Indian followers, and that officially established his new public identity as Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
And the movement itself started systematically from the get-go.
Very systematically. First, it was the spiritual development movement. Then, in 1957, it was renamed the Spiritual Regeneration Movement. And then came the first big global push. The year 1958 marks the start of his world tour, which was a massive undertaking for someone with basically no resources.
The itinerary for that first tour just shows his ambition, doesn't it? Starting in Rangoon, moving through Asia, and then hitting the West through Hawaii and San Francisco.
It really underscores the contrast between the huge wealth he'd eventually have and these very, very modest origins. The initial modesty is key to understanding the purity of the movement's start, you could say.
There's that quote from the newspaper in Honolulu.
Yes, the Honolulu Star-Bulletin. They covered his arrival, and they painted this remarkable picture. They wrote, "He has no money, he asks for nothing. His worldly possessions can be carried in one hand."
Wow.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is on a world odyssey. He carries a message that he says will rid the world of all unhappiness and discontent. It established this public image of a selfless messenger, completely detached from material things.
But as we've said, selflessness and organization are not mutually exclusive things.
Not at all. And his next move proved that. While he was in Los Angeles in 1959, he stopped just being reactive. He formalized his whole effort by developing a detailed 3-year plan.
A business plan, essentially.
It was a strategic plan. This pragmatic approach, a skill he likely honed as Gurudev's secretary and as a physics graduate, was instrumental in being able to scale the movement.
And to scale, you need infrastructure.
Absolutely. So he founded the International Meditation Society. And then, maybe more crucially, in 1966, he founded the Students' International Meditation Society, or SIMS.
SIMS was the vehicle that drove TM right into the intellectual heart of the West.
It really was. By the 1970s, the sources show SIM centers were active on over 1,000 university campuses. We're talking Harvard, Yale, all the big names. This showed a massive systematic success in connecting with young, educated Westerners who were looking for something beyond traditional religion.
That systematic groundwork was obviously essential, but what really rocketed him from an academic curiosity to a global icon was, well, it was one single event.
His association with the greatest cultural engine of the 20th century.
Exactly. This is where the celebrity magnet phase really begins.
The cultural saturation was almost instantaneous. In 1967, the Beatles' endorsement changed everything. It started simply enough, George Harrison and his wife, Pattie Boyd, they attended a lecture in London.
And then very shortly after, the Maharishi became the spiritual advisor to the entire group.
And his visibility just went stratospheric. He was on the covers of Life, Newsweek, Time magazine, all within that 1967 to 1968 period.
The moment everyone remembers, of course, is the retreat to Rishikesh, India, in February 1968. I mean, this event permanently merged the counterculture with ancient Indian spirituality in the Western mind.
It was an incredible collision of worlds, but the actual time they spent there was much shorter than the popular myth suggests. The sources confirm the timeline of their departures, and it really highlights the intensity and, the ultimate friction of that retreat. Ringo Starr, who was known for not loving roughing it,
Right.
he left after just 10 days. John Lennon and George Harrison left 16 days later. And Paul McCartney, who was the most enduring participant of the four, he left after 5 weeks.
But even with that brevity, the impact was profound. Major media outlets reported that the Maharishi's influence steered the band away from their earlier experimentation with LSD.
And it became a tremendous source of creative inspiration for them.
Unbelievable inspiration.
The sources credit their retreat with inspiring dozens of songs that would later show up on the White Album. You just can't overstate the creative output.
Yeah.
And the personal impact for some of them remained positive for years.
Right. Paul McCartney later reflected on it.
He did. Years later, he described Transcendental Meditation as a gift that gave him stability and focus during a period of just intense creative and personal upheaval.
And the Beatles were just the vanguard, weren't they? Once they were in, the floodgates just opened for other massive cultural figures.
Oh, absolutely. That era drew in a whole spectrum of followers. You have the surf rock sound of the Beach Boys, the actress Mia Farrow, and even the incredibly wealthy heiress Doris Duke. They all sought him out. It cemented his status not just as a religious leader, but as a cultural arbiter.
We have to pivot now, though, to the very sensitive topic that shattered this idyllic image and caused the public and very controversial split with the Beatles.
The rumors and specific allegations of sexual advances during the Rishikesh retreat.
Exactly.
This is a critical historical moment, and it's one we have to handle with deep impartiality, while also, of course, maintaining appropriate sympathy for those who allege this inappropriate behavior.
So the Beatles formally renounced their association in London in June of 1968. And the initial public explanation was all about rumors and alleged improprieties.
And John Lennon was particularly disillusioned. He cited a rumor about the Maharishi making advances on Mia Farrow and, as he put it, a few other women.
And Lennon's response was immediate and visceral, and he immortalized it in one of his most famous songs.
Yes, his track, Sexy Sadie, was written in response. It was reportedly intended to be titled Maharishi. Lennon just felt completely betrayed. He saw him as a fraud who had failed the basic test of celibacy and asceticism.
And yet, the accounts around this primary allegation are conflicting, which really complicates the historical record.
That conflicting testimony is vital to present a balanced view from the source material. Years later, George Harrison, who remained a committed meditator his whole life, vehemently denied those rumors. He called them bullshit, total bullshit, and he publicly apologized for the way the Maharishi had been treated.
He attributed it to their youthful impulsiveness.
He did, but then you have Mia Farrow's own memoir, which provides a narrative that gives some structure to that initial concern.
It's a very detailed account.
It is. She wrote about an incident that she found deeply disturbing. During a session of deep meditation in Rishikesh, she wrote of becoming aware of the Maharishi's, quote, two surprisingly male, hairy arms going around her.
She panicked.
She panicked and immediately fled the room. And when she expressed her distress to a senior student, she was reportedly told that it was all a misunderstanding caused by her level of consciousness, and that, quote, it's an honor to be touched by a holy man.
That explanation really reveals the immense power dynamic at play within that inner circle.
It really does. And the timeline of allegations about his celibacy extends well beyond that one retreat. It suggests this was a persistent issue inside the organization.
That's confirmed by later sources.
It is. Several former assistants came forward years later with more claims. A former personal assistant, sometimes referred to as a skin boy because of his duties, claimed in a 2010 documentary that he frequently escorted women to the Maharishi's rooms.
Implying that he was engaging in sexual relations.
Yes, and that it directly contradicted the public image of a lifelong celibate ascetic.
And there's an even more explicit account from Judith Bork.
In her 2018 memoir, Bork detailed an alleged 2-year relationship with the Maharishi. And crucially, she claimed the instructions were very clear. Don't tell anyone. She said she knew of 14 other women who had varying degrees of similar experiences. This certainly challenges the public narrative of strict celibacy.
But her account also has a significant level of nuance about the nature of that relationship.
This is very important context from the sources. Bork herself clarified that she did not in any way feel invaded or forced in any situation with him. She said she felt loved and didn't believe the Maharishi needed forgiveness for wanting to experience life fully, including an active sex life.
So it suggests that while his actions contradicted his public vow, some people inside the movement reconciled spirituality and sexuality in a way that protected his image within their own structure.
That seems to be the case.
And following all this controversy, there was a major strategic shift in how the Maharishi operated globally. He moved away from that intense media spotlight.
It was a brilliant administrative pivot. In 1968, he must have realized the public drama was detrimental, so he announced he would retreat from public activities to focus entirely on training TM teachers.
And he moved his headquarters.
He moved his global headquarters to Seelisberg, Switzerland. Later, in 1970, it shifted to Italy, but the final destination was near Vlodrop in the Netherlands, where he settled in 1990. This strategic relocation suggests a definite shift from the charismatic guru leading public tours to a powerful administrative figure guiding this massive, internalized training and teaching empire.
So once he moved away from the celebrity tours, the Maharishi pivoted his message dramatically. He started framing his spiritual teachings not just as effective, but as inherently scientific.
And fully compatible with modern academia. This is the birth of the science of creative intelligence, or SCI.
An ingenious concept.
It was. MMY sought to achieve three things at once. First, revive the ancient spiritual tradition of India. Second, prove that meditation was a practical tool for every single person, regardless of their religious background. And third, and this was fundamental, to demonstrate that Vedanta, the ultimate spiritual knowledge, was not just compatible with science, but was the underlying field of all scientific endeavor.
And the core philosophical promise was simple, wasn't it? It appealed directly to the needs of the modern, often stressed, Western individual.
Completely. It was centered on immediate personal fulfillment. MMY's repeated assertion was, being happy is of the utmost importance. Success in anything is through happiness. He taught that within every person, there's an unlimited, untapped reservoir of energy, intelligence, and happiness.
The source of all creative intelligence.
That's it. So he took this ancient Vedantic philosophy, the idea that an unchanging absolute reality underlies all transient existence, and he just gave it a scientific-sounding name.
He translated the core teaching of Advaita Vedanta into the language of modern psychology and physics.
Precisely. The absolute reality was framed as the ocean of bliss consciousness, while the changing world was just the waves. And this was codified as the science of creative intelligence. His foundational book, The Science of Being and Art of Living, sold over 1 million copies.
And he didn't just market this to the public, he immediately pushed it straight into academia.
This was the key to establishing legitimacy. SCI was introduced at Stanford University in 1969, and after that high-profile placement, it was quickly adopted by 25 other American universities. By attaching the word science to it and targeting institutions of higher learning, he elevated the status of TM beyond just a spiritual practice.
Now we move to the next phase of expansion, the advanced techniques in the mid-1970s. This is where the movement started offering more than just relaxation. It started offering supernatural-sounding abilities.
Famously including yogic flying.
Right.
The introduction of the TM-CD program marked a really significant departure from the simple relaxation-focused technique. It was presented as an advanced practice to refine the mind-body relationship.
And these practices required more commitment.
Much more commitment, both in time and intuition. And they included exercises intended to cultivate CDs, or special powers, culminating in the very controversial yogic flying.
For anyone unfamiliar with the term, yogic flying it's not soaring through the air.
No. In practice, as observed by outsiders, it often looks like individuals hopping while seated in the full lotus position. However, the movement insists that this is the first stage of levitation.
They see it as a physiological manifestation of heightened consciousness.
Right. Not a supernatural act, but a measurable, repeatable physical phenomenon that results from improved neurological coherence.
And associated with this advanced, more exclusive practice came a truly breathtaking sociological claim, the Maharishi effect.
The Maharishi effect is maybe his most ambitious thesis. It proposes that when a critical mass of people, specifically the square root of 1% of a local population, practices the advanced TMCD program together,
they create an energetic field.
Is a field of coherence in the collective consciousness. And this field, MMY claimed, acts to suppress negative societal trends like crime, violence, even accidents, and generate peace and harmony instead.
And the claims attached to this effect reached a massive global scale. I mean, we're talking about geopolitical intervention through meditation.
That is absolutely correct. The most famous assertion in the sources is the claim that the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was directly attributable to the Maharishi effect.
How did they explain that?
The organizational materials claim that the performance of Yagya's traditional Hindu fire ceremonies by 7,000 pandits in India, combined with hundreds of yogic flyers strategically placed in Germany, generated enough coherence and unity in the collective consciousness of Germany to dismantle the political and physical barrier.
That shows the movement's radical self-perception, doesn't it, as a kind of global technological solution for governance.
It does. And to manage that scope, the Maharishi needed institutions. His organizational capacity transitioned from simple centers to universities and comprehensive systems of life.
His administrative mind never rested.
Never. In 1972, he launched his World Plan, which aimed to establish 3,600 TM centers globally. Institutionally, he founded Maharishi International University, or MIU, in Fairfield, Iowa in 1974.
Which was later renamed Maharishi University of Management, MUM.
Right. And this became the educational hub for propagating SCI.
But the sources do raise some questions about the academic legitimacy of these institutions within the mainstream structure.
They do. While MUM has departments in subjects like neuroscience and psychology, the sources specify that these graduate programs are not fully accredited by mainstream bodies like the American Psychological Association or the ACGME. This suggests it's a parallel educational system dedicated primarily to Maharishi Vedic science, existing outside of mainstream academic oversight.
Meanwhile, he didn't forget his roots. He established a vast educational network back in India.
His commitment to India was immense. He founded the Maharishi Vidya Mandir Schools, the MVMS, starting in 1995. This is a huge network of 148 schools, serving between 90,000 and 100,000 students.
So he was ensuring his teachings were integrated into the educational fabric of his home country.
Exactly. And finally, the whole organizational vision culminated in a total system of life called Maharishi Vedic Science, which applied Vedic principles to everything from medicine to architecture.
It was a complete package.
A complete package. It included the Maharishi Vedic approach to health, which is a system of prevention-oriented natural medicine. Then there was Maharishi Sapatya Veda, a sophisticated mathematical system for architectural design based on alignment with cosmic principles.
And that architectural system wasn't just theoretical, it was built into physical reality.
Absolutely. The headquarters in Volodrop was built using these principles. The entire community of Maharishi Vedic City, Iowa, was built this way. All buildings face due east. They adhere to specific proportional rules, all designed to promote health and fortune. It was a 360-degree integration of ancient knowledge into modern living.
The Maharishi's ambition was never just confined to the individual mind or to personal health. He genuinely viewed his methodology as a form of natural law that he believed should be the basis for global governance.
That political ambition started early. In the 1970s, he formally pursued this concept of a world government powered by consciousness. He personally sought meetings with world leaders, famously meeting Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau in 1975.
He was trying to persuade them that societal problems were just errors in consciousness.
And that they could be corrected by large groups of meditators.
This interest in governance then formalized into an actual political mechanism, the Natural Law Party.
The NLP was founded in 1992, and it became active in 42 countries very quickly. It ran on platforms that promised applying these natural law principles, basically the Maharishi effect scaled up, could solve everything from economic woes to environmental crises. They positioned themselves as the non-ideological scientific solution.
But critics immediately charged that the party served another, less savory purpose.
Well, critics argued that the NLP was fundamentally a political arm designed to recruit people into the TM movement and raise its profile in political circles, rather than to actually win elections. It operated more like a global marketing vehicle.
And then the Maharishi himself shut it all down?
He did. In 2004, with a typically concise assessment, he said, "I had to get into politics to know what is wrong there," suggesting he'd gathered the data he needed and was moving on.
And after the NLP, he launched an even more ambitious, quasi-sovereign global organization.
In 2000, he founded the Global Country of World Peace, the GCWP. This was the ultimate expression of his political vision, a non-territorial global entity aiming for permanent world peace and prosperity.
And he formalized its structure by crowning Tony Nader,
An MIT-trained neuroscientist who had embraced TM as the Maharaja.
the sources revealed that the GCWP made real, if ultimately failed, attempts to establish a physical sovereign micronation.
Oh, these attempts were serious, and they were well-funded. The GCWP tried to lease land in Suriname, reportedly offering the president $1.3 billion for a 200-year lease. They tried to establish sovereign territory in parts of Africa, even tried to designate a king for a remote reservation in Costa Rica, all of which ultimately failed.
And the economic initiatives supporting this global country were just staggering in their scope.
They operated on a scale of ambition that few organizations ever attempt. The organization introduced its own currency in 2002, the RAM, intended for trade within its orbit and to finance peace-promoting projects. And the financial plans were immense. A $10 trillion plan to end global poverty through organic farming, and a $1 billion plan to establish groups of meditators to end conflict.
To even contemplate schemes of that magnitude, the Maharishi's organizational structure had to be managing colossal financial holdings. Let's get into the complex financial nexus of the TM movement.
This is where the movement's contradictions become really acute. The organization was characterized by vast financial power, blending numerous charitable nonprofits with substantial for-profit businesses.
Like what?
For-profit health clinics, mail-order stores selling Vedic products, organic farms, and extensive portfolios of commercial and residential real estate all over the world.
It's extremely difficult to pin down the organization's total wealth, but the sources give estimates that place it firmly in the category of a major global enterprise.
That's right. Estimates of the total value range from hundreds of millions to multiple billions of U.S. dollars. We have more concrete figures for the U.S. assets. In 2008, they were valued around $300 million.
Wow.
And that encompassed dozens of hotels, commercial buildings, large tracts of undeveloped land. Further reports suggested that when the Maharishi died, his personal estate was estimated to be around $300 million as well. This immense wealth and the reports of his luxury, his famous use of Rolls Royces, drew constant scrutiny.
And this financial scrutiny wasn't just hypothetical. It led to a major critical confrontation with Indian authorities in 1988.
This was a key turning point. In January 1988, Indian tax authorities conducted a high-profile raid on offices at the Maharishi Nagar complex in New Delhi. The organization and the Maharishi were accused of falsifying expenses and tax fraud.
And the impact was decisive.
It was. The Maharishi, who had been operating his international headquarters in Switzerland, subsequently moved the administrative hub permanently to the Netherlands, partly in response to these very serious allegations from the Indian government.
All these elements, the wealth, the politics, the commercialization, they bring us back to that core ideological tension, the insistence that TM is scientific versus the evidence that it is profoundly religious.
MMY maintained throughout his entire career that TM was simply a scientific technique for relaxation and stress reduction, comparable to any physiological process. He was adamant it was non-religious, using modern language to appeal to a secular Western audience.
But the very act of initiation into the practice, which every single TM meditator goes through, it seems to contradict this foundational claim.
The initiation ceremony is the sticking point for all the critics, including in the legal system. The process involves a traditional Hindu puja, a worship ritual. It's performed by the teacher in Sanskrit, offering devotion to a lineage of Hindu gods, starting with Gurudev.
And while the meditator is just a passive observer,
the inclusion of this devotional Hindu ritual makes the claim of being non-religious extremely difficult to uphold.
And this religious element was eventually codified into a legal decision in the U.S.
It was. In 1977, a landmark U.S. federal court ruling definitively determined that TM was religious. And consequently, its adoption in public schools was ruled a breach of the separation of church and state, the First Amendment. This decision forced TM schools to rely solely on private funding.
The structural ambiguity claiming science while practicing religion led to criticism from multiple, even contradictory camps.
He was critiqued fiercely from both sides. Non-Hindus objected to the incorporation of religion into what was marketed as a secular technique. But at the same time, he faced significant criticism from traditional Indian sages.
What was their objection?
They criticized him for simplifying the ancient, rigorous path of spiritual attainment, for making it too easy, abandoning traditional asceticism and suffering. and they specifically targeted the commercial aspects.
The selling of mantras.
Exactly. They criticized him for selling commercial mantras, which were, in fact, the sacred Sanskrit names of Hindu Vedic deities. They suggested he was commercializing terms that should only be transferred through traditional, selfless paths.
It's like he was trying to have it both ways.
He was. William Sims Bainbridge summarized it perfectly, noting that the Maharishi taught a highly simplified form of Hinduism, adapted for Westerners who did not possess the cultural background to accept the full panoply of Hindu beliefs. He effectively reduced complex theology to a marketable, manageable technique.
In his final decade, despite leading this massive global organization, the Maharishi became more and more remote and secluded.
She became highly secluded in Vlodrop, Netherlands. And his residence there was a powerful symbol of his MVS concepts. It was the largest wooden building in the Netherlands, built entirely according to Maharishi Sthapatya architectural standards. He communicated almost exclusively via video, rarely leaving his two-room quarters.
And he made sure his teachings reached his massive global following without needing to tour.
He used his own vast media infrastructure. He had a subscription satellite TV channel called Veda Vision, which broadcast content in 22 languages to 144 countries. It maintained his image and influence while ensuring his physical isolation.
He believed it conserved his personal energy.
Yes, allowing him to focus entirely on administrative guidance.
His final public act was a simple retirement announcement.
On January 12, 2008, he announced he was closing my design duty to Gurudev, meaning the global propagation task was done, and that he would now retreat into silence to study ancient Indian texts. 3 weeks later, on February 5th, he died peacefully in his sleep.
And the recognition he received at his passing really underscores the immense cultural weight he held in his home country, even after all the decades he spent away.
His funeral received state honors in India, which is highly significant. The cremation was held at his Allahabad ashram, overlooking the sacred confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna rivers. The state recognition was granted because he was acknowledged as a master in the venerable tradition of Advaita Vedanta, founded by the great sage Shankara.
That recognition solidified his place in the historical lineage, regardless of the controversies.
It did.
So when you look back across the entire arc of his life, the decades of teaching, organizing, influencing millions, what is the undeniable, enduring influence of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi?
I think his major legacy is the popularization and normalization of meditation in the West. Before him, meditation was often seen as this arcane, difficult practice reserved for recluses. He successfully took India's ancient spiritual traditions, and through a structured, systematic, and highly global organization, he made them accessible to a mass, modern audience.
And beyond just popular culture, the source materials highlight his unique insistence on scientific validation, which influenced a whole new field of inquiry.
Yes, his scientific contribution is frequently cited. He proposed the existence of a unique or fourth state of consciousness, distinct from waking, sleeping, or dreaming, which he argued had a measurable physiological basis. His push for rigorous scientific research into the effects of TM was unprecedented. Newsweek, for instance, credited him with launching a legitimate new field of neuroscience because of his emphasis on applying empirical study to inner experience.
And despite the controversy and the turbulent split, the positive testimonials from some of his most famous early followers remain a powerful part of his narrative.
Paul McCartney's tribute after the Maharishi's death provides a crucial final perspective. McCartney stated that his personal memories would always be joyful, and he called him a great man who worked tirelessly for the cause of unity. This suggests that for many followers, the core technique and mission really transcended the organizational or personal controversies that emerged later.
It's clear that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was a figure just defined by powerful contradictions. He was the giggling guru who appealed to the counterculture, yet at the same time an incredibly effective international businessman and administrator.
Right.
He created a movement defined by scientific-sounding pronouncements and claims of world peace, while at the same time facing serious legal and personal accusations regarding his wealth and his conduct.
I think the most compelling insight that's revealed by these sources is the sheer genius of his structural adaptation.
Yeah.
MMY managed to successfully package a complex, traditional Hindu teaching Vedanta into a simple, repeatable technology, which was TM, to appeal directly to the modern Western mind.
And he offered this radical promise of enlightenment and inner fulfillment without requiring people to renounce their worldly lives.
Exactly. And by doing that, he fundamentally revolutionized how spirituality is mass-marketed and disseminated globally.
So, as you reflect on this monumental figure and the global empire he built, consider this provocative thought, which is rooted in the core of his political ambition. Given MMY's assertion that ultimate success stems from achieving happiness, and his attempt to apply meditation on a grand, quantifiable scale as a technology for global peace through the Maharishi effect, we are left to wonder. Can a deep personal spiritual practice truly be scaled up and applied as a political or governmental technology to achieve large-scale, measurable societal change across the entire planet? We appreciate you joining us for this extensive analysis of these sources. Thanks for listening.